Yeah. So anyway, this is a tradition that uh, I'm told has happened in the past. This is my first one, um, and really, what we want to do is just kind of look at Pinot by the numbers, look at the growth, look at uh, who's using it out in the world, and go through a little summary of a few um, interesting features that have shipped in the last year. Some of you know about all of those. Some of you on this call have built them. Some of you might not know about all of them. Like maybe you've been focused on some and not on others. So I think just hitting the high points is a good idea, just to kind of keep us all in the loop of what's going on. So what I'm going to do is share. So yeah, I just gave you the agenda without showing you the agenda slide. Um, I'd like to kick it off. Kishore, do you have
Oh yeah,
anything?
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to first thank you for everyone being here and for the entire community. It's amazing to see a project grow to this level in like few years. I remember back in 2020 when we started, it was a very small community growing day by day and week by week and year by year. I think this is the first time probably I'm looking forward to this in a way as an audience to see like all the amazing things that we have done in this year. Previous years, I probably knew each and every feature that we actually put in the project. So super excited to this and looking forward to hearing all the awesome things that we have done, and also looking forward to hearing the roadmap for 2023.
So yeah, that's a good sign when the project co-creator can step away from the year-end update and and watch. So here we are. All right, I want to hand it over next to Yarden. Yarden runs community here at StarTree, and so she operates a lot of programs, does a lot of things that are directly benefit Apache Pinot. Some of our community things are kind of StarTree-ish, like we have StarTree shirts and things like that, but a lot of them are really Pinot related. And so I think it's appropriate that she just give us an update on what she's doing.
Thank you, Tim. So, hi everyone. I'm seeing the names here. I think I've talked to most of you. So, for those of you who doesn't know me, I'm the community manager here at StarTree. You see me a lot at the Pinot space and also at StarTree. So, 2022, as Kishore said, an exciting year for Apache Pinot and also for the community in terms of growth of members and also the activity and programs we ran. So the first program we ran was the StarTree All Stars. We soon gonna launch the second class of 2023. This group is made of the people who fuel the community with documentation, code contributions. It's made of PMC committers and contributors, and also content creators. We believe this group is building the foundations of Apache Pinot and spreading the word technically. So yeah, this group also get access to product discussions, roadmaps, events, open CFPs, and also swag. So we will announce the 2023 class on early January. This is StarTree All Stars. The next slide. The next thing we have is real-time analytics. So this year we launched for the first time real-time analytics. We had two events who were virtually, and we saw great success there. We have almost 2,000 registrants and 630 people attended. We got a great feedback from the community on the content, on the agenda, and it was great to see you there. We have another event, which this time will be in person in San Francisco on April 23. And this is a call for you guys. If you're interested, the call for paper is now open to submit your talk for this event. We're expecting around 300 attendees, and it's all about real-time analytics and specifically Pinot. So we hope to see you there. That's about real-time analytics.
I want to I
And
want to I want to
yeah,
underscore that if you're on this meetup, if you're in this meetup, you should probably submit a talk if you haven't already. So yes, take note of that.
The next thing we've launched is the swag store. So the swag store is for the StarTree community and also for Pinot community. We want to reward you for your contribution. Contribution could be public speaking, organizing meetups, podcast, blog post, anything that is a contribution for the community to empower the other community members with your knowledge sharing. We want to know about it and we want to give you coins. With those coins, I mean, for any action you do, there are listed coins you can get. You can find all the information in a very organized table on our community page under StarTree Swag Store. So just send us an email to the email mentioned there, community@StarTree, with what you've done, and we will grant you coins to get super cool swag from our store. We're also always refreshing the editions there. Yeah. And the last thing is our meetups activity. So this year we've launched 37 meetup groups all over the world, which is very exciting. And we see the growth of people and your interests and other interests, which is amazing. And yeah, so probably all in all, every big city now there's a real-time analytics meetup group powered by Apache Pinot and StarTree. So yeah, stay updated there and also check the events channel on Pinot and StarTree Spaces. I'm always updating there. I also shared a link to subscribe to our calendar, Meetups calendar, so you can be updated with what's coming next.
And since I was asking for speakers before, I'll ask again here. A lot of you who are attending this meetup live are people who should not just be interested in attending meetups. You should be speaking, or I mean, should is a strong word. I want you to speak. So wherever you are, there's probably something close to you. We're really trying to make this a force in the next year so that there are always meetups going on somewhere that are about real-time analytics. And when we say that, we mostly mean Pinot. It would be possible in a meetup for somebody to give a talk about something that's not Pinot, but sort of adjacent. But mostly they're about Pinot.
Yeah,
and in this call, we're talking about Pinot. And a lot of you have things to say, so please.
Yeah, sorry, I invite you warmly. I invite you warmly to Slack me if you're interested in speaking or even doing your first public speaking. We can work on your presentation together and find like the right location for you. So yes, this is a warm encouragement for you.
There it is. We also have the newsletter, and
yeah,
put the link. And we'll put that. We'll send that out.
Yes, I will share the link to subscribe. Here it is. Shared it on the chat. You can subscribe. Just register to our monthly newsletter, Apache Pinot newsletter, with events updates, product updates, new versions. Everything is there. I promise you, it's not that long, but it's very interesting and efficient. So you can subscribe there. Thank you.
Thank you, Yarden. This is a word cloud of everybody who had a commit in 2022, roughly sized by the number of commits. So if your name is here and you think it's not big enough, I think you could make a case that they should be sized by the total number of lines that you changed. But then we would have to make a decision like, is it better to remove lines or add lines? Do you count both? It's tough. Metrics are hard. So I just went with number of commits. I thought that was the most fair. But yeah, I mean, this kind of stuff there isn't really a way to objectively measure contributions in an automated way. But I thought this was a fun way of looking at the year in the code itself. So there you go. And yeah, if you think your name should be bigger, let me know. I'll update the slide. Um, but yeah, it's a fun thing. Big picture community stats. Like there are two things that I look at, which is Slack workspace members and downloads. Now, downloads are just pulls of Apache Pinot/Pinot from Docker Hub, the number that Docker Hub reports. And there's the Apache Pinot Slack. There's also the StarTree Slack workspace that I look after. But these are the numbers for the Pinot Slack and the Pinot image. You have roughly, on average, 65-ish% growth in both those things this past year. Communities grow, right? I mean, there are factors external to the project. Like, are you working on something that the world needs, that people have a demand for? And I think if we look kind of outside of Pinot to the world that we're trying to serve with Pinot, there is a growing need for a technology that does this, right? That's kind of why we're all here, because we think this is a more and more important thing with the kinds of software architectures people are deploying, the kinds of user experiences people are trying to create and everything. You need Pinot more in the future. So there's external pressure for us to grow. There's also project momentum. That's why we're talking about feature updates, right? Like people have to be committing code and building features, and there's all kinds of that happening. When you get into like bigger companies making decisions, sometimes they want to see other big companies do it, which is why we're going to talk about logos. That helps people make adoption decisions. And also the community being a pleasant place to be is nice, right? Like, are people nice to you when you ask questions in Slack? What is discussion like on issues in GitHub and all that kind of stuff? And I think Pinot really wins on all those fronts. There's also, a lot of work that I'm trying to do, right? To do things like have more meetups and sort of get the Pinot flywheel spinning faster. And so I hope to see those growth rates be bigger next year, but we had a good year. That's solid growth. In 2022, the year's not over yet, but we're shaping up at about 1.78 million downloads, about 3,300 Slack users, and 4.3 thousand GitHub stars. I don't know why those were in a build. That's strange. There you go. That's the full slide. Okay. Now, I'm not going to tell this would be super tedious. I don't have all the stories of all these deployments, but we're just looking at logos of folks who have made adoption decisions for Pinot throughout the year, broken down by quarter, because, hey, that's what people do. Apparently, StarTree started using Pinot in Q2. That's interesting. And there you go. There's a lot of logos there. It's nice to talk about kind of the query rates that we're seeing at places, right? Just how big are the biggest workloads at places like LinkedIn, where Pinot was born, and Uber and Stripe, that are just kind of key places where adoption takes place. And it's important to know that these things are happening in the world. Again, like in the work that I do, I'll talk to folks who are like, well, okay, how do I know whether I should take Pinot seriously? And it's good to know that these use cases exist, because frankly, most companies in the world aren't going to operate the scale of LinkedIn or Uber. Most companies aren't even going to operate the scale of Stripe, right? But it's good to know that for those who do get there and are at that scale, that, for example, with more than a petabyte of data, more than a trillion records, you can still have a 70 millisecond P99 latency on average. Now, of course, the real world is always more complicated, like how many of the records are in the table where that latency was measured. And sometimes you have to dig into things. And I always tell people to run their own tests. But dang it, these are things that happen in the world. And it's good for us to know that Pinot actually succeeds at some of the largest scales that human beings field on the internet, and some of the biggest sets of data, that in a commercial capacity, that we ever even deal with. And that's pretty cool stuff. Okay, features. Let's just kind of get into some of the cool stuff that's happened in the past year. Again, some of you, I think, know every single one of these things, and you don't need them explained to you. Some of them, maybe you know some and not others. So I'm hopeful that just going through the list is useful. Rung, are you on the call? I saw you before.
Yep, I'm here.
Would you like to talk about this? I'm told you know something about it.
Awesome, great, yeah. So yes, one of the more interesting features that we develop later this year, or actually we have been doing this for like a long time, but majorly we actually make it beta available later this year is the multi-stage query engine. So as you can imagine, previously Pinot's executional engine is mostly working on kind of like a scatter fashion. So a broker distributed a whole bunch of really complex query subplans, including the segments that it's supposed to be targeting on, and whatnot, basically sending to the server. Server does a whole bunch of really heavy lifting, crunching data, and then returning the data back to the broker. That clearly has a lot of limitations. For example, it cannot support kind of like a distributed reduce. For example, if you have a really huge group by or you have a really large fact dimensional table joins, you can actually do that in the broker, or you cannot actually pre-distribute all of the large tables to each one of the servers. So with the multi-stage query engine, we're actually opening up all of these possibilities for doing distributed intermediate reduces so that we can execute some of these larger queries in larger dimension and larger distributional fashions. Also, with this type of generic multi-stage computational engine, we can actually support more standardized SQL semantics, such as nested group bys, nested joins, group by after joins, etc., etc. So this is a pretty exciting features that we would like to announce.
It takes two, and Sid will know when. I'll just give kind of a summary of these. But this is a cool one that when you've got time series data with gaps, because in the real world, you have gaps in time series data, things, pipelines stall, sensors break, or even by design, there could just be times when you're not acquiring data. This is kind of getting us started with the idea of interpolating. So right now you can just fill with the default value or fill with the last observed value when you've got a time range, rather than failing or not returning results. So my guess is there will be new strategies in future versions. This is this kind of thing that tends to grow hair, so there'll be, my guess, more values in the future, but this is a very good start. And you can see on the third line there, select gap. There's that gap fill function that actually takes quite a few parameters to make that work. But there you go. Spark 3 support. This is just hard to talk about a lot because basically what it means is there's Spark 3 support. So now there's an API where you can use Spark 3 for Pinot segments. Previously, we just had 2.x compatibility, so that's a good thing. Also, better Flink support. So what you used to have to do if you were, say, ingesting a few topics and processing them in Flink, and to have to then round streams, do your stream processing job in Flink, and then emit those records back into a Kafka topic, and then use Pinot's Kafka integration to ingest from Kafka, which it does real well. Now it can essentially have Flink will just create Pinot segments directly like Spark or Hadoop would do. So you don't have that, the necessity of doing that round trip. A UI improvement. I love seeing things like this happen. And I guess, hey, this is a good time to editorialize on this. Focusing on the experience of the newcomer using Pinot, like what is it like to download or do a Docker pull and Google and find a quick start it's kind of my job to make sure that Googling gets you to a good quick start, right? So if that doesn't work, you should have words with me. But in terms of Pinot itself, the product, what's it like to start up? What's it like to use as a newcomer who doesn't really have a complete mental model filled out and really know about it all that much? Things like this are nice. Once you're comfortable with it, exposing the list of indexes on a segment through a REST API is hardly difficult, right? Like we should be able to drive curl and make that happen. And, if you're using this in any sort of programmatic way, you're going to want the REST API anyway. But exposing it in the web UI is just great. And in general, focusing on making that early experience of the new Pinot adopter a positive one is really, really important. So that's just a message I think we should all repeat to ourselves all the time. Like, what is it like for the person who just did the Docker pull and just, started the image and hit the URL to start playing with Pinot? That needs to be super smooth and super rewarding. And it's little stuff like this. I'm spending like 2 minutes talking about this feature that's just a dang screenshot, right? Because it's the idea behind the feature. This is really important. I think that we collectively focus on helping that person who just decided to give it a shot make sure that they have a very pleasant experience. Because features drive adoption, performance drives adoption. The so-called social proof of other big companies using Pinot, that drives adoption. But when it comes to the individual developer forming an opinion about whether this thing is worth their time, this kind of stuff is huge. So thank you. Timestamp index. This is great. We've had timestamp as a data type for a long time, but now there's this really cool way of automatically making a hidden column. So to do this before, you would have had to do a bunch of work in making a different column. But now you can specify a grain, like day or week or second or minute or whatever, and Pinot will automatically make a hidden column that basically, you think of it as taking the timestamp and truncating it to, like, if it's minute grain, it'll like leave off seconds and milliseconds and just have everything be for that minute. And then you can build a range index on that implied column. That's not implied, it's an actual column. And get super fast time lookups based on that grain. So if you need all the records that happen in that minute, now you get them. And, there's benchmarks. We see a 5x speed up on a 7 million record data set. That's probably typical. There's probably cases where we do better, but huge thing. I love this. Insert into. It's not the insert into that you might think. You don't actually get to insert records into a table. That would be weird. But this is just a way of setting up imports. So we have kind of hijacked insert into to be able to create an import job. So you specify, in this case, this example is specifying a directory in an S3 bucket and providing credentials and whatever other config you need to do that ingest. Okay, Wrong. I think this is where you take it away. Not Wrong. Sid, I think this is where you take it away. Wrong's like, wait, what? I'm not talking about pause return.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Hi, I'm Sid. I'll talk about a few things on behalf of a couple of folks who contributed some of the features to Apache Pinot. One is this pause resume real-time ingestion, which we sort of added to help with like debugging and things like that. So at will, you can pause the real-time consumption and then also resume. And there is also a controller API to sort of force commit the consuming segments, which kind of triggers the commit or the real-time segment conversion from consuming to completed, right? And you can see that we published a small blog post talking about the feature and its usage. And there are also user docs linked here for anyone who wants to configure it. How do I actually go to the next slide here? Maybe I can ask.
You tell me. I am your slide assistant today.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, the next one is adaptive server selection. So our motivation here was basically we have seen roughly like 24 to 30 occurrences per quarter where transient slowness is experienced by one or two hosts in a cluster, basically kind of become the bottleneck for the overall query. like things like nick flipping or GC and things like that. So we sort of implemented a new query routing strategy where broker kind of collects the performance stats of servers, things like number of in-flight requests, then the exponential moving average of latency, and sort of hybrid approach that combines the two. And then the new routing approach that's plugged in basically uh, builds on top of the existing routing round robin, and then kind of uses the stats to decide to route the query to the better performing servers. So essentially, the advantages are basically we kind of try to avoid slowing down the queries further by continuously overloading or continuing to set same amount of queries to the underperforming servers. Latency improvement wasn't really the goal. The prevention of latency degradation was really the goal here. But we have seen in quite a few cases where P99 latency has also improved. We have deployed this in all our production colos and have been observing good results. Like, for example, recently there was a nick flip in production on one of our clusters, and there was slowness on that server where the latency started to degrade. But then as soon as the broker caught up with the performance stats of that server, we started routing less and less queries to the server, and then we recovered fairly quickly as it would have been otherwise. As far as OSS is concerned, Stripe has also shown great interest in using this feature, and they had actually deployed it on a very large cluster and also engaged with us on some of the optimizations that can be done. So yeah, I have linked the design doc, user docs, and the comprehensive benchmarking study that we did on our production scale performance cluster. Another one is runtime query killing. So we have seen like lots of expensive queries kind of causing in our production clusters. So we wanted to kind of improve the resiliency of Pinot along those lines. So we built a framework basically where for a query that is being executed, we kind of track statistics around the memory allocation as well as CPU time. CPU time was already added a long time ago in the execution code path where we instrument the code path and measure CPU time. We now recently added the memory allocation tracking, the heap memory allocation tracking, and basically added anchor points throughout the execution code where we are collecting these stats, and then there is a background thread that kind of samples all this information periodically and then decides that once you have kind of reached the trigger point, which are several like panic mode, non-panic mode, or some other threshold, things like that, then it either can decide to kill all the bad queries or it can decide to kill the most expensive query depending on memory or CPU or things like that. As part of that, we had also hardened the query cancellation mechanism. So server-side implementation is merged, and we have actually started to deploy it internally. The broker-side implementation is in progress, and after the implementation, we also deployed it on our production scale performance cluster, and we saw expensive queries that have historically caused them getting killed with feature enabled. Otherwise, they would have crashed the server and caused So again, yeah, feel free to take a look at the design doc and the user docs here.
And if I can add a note, it seems like with the multi-stage query engine becoming soon a production thing, the need to kill long-running queries is probably going to get greater and not smaller. So it's good that this has come along.
Yes, and I think we have had some discussions with Rong. I mean, he was part of the design discussion as well. And I think we have plans to probably use it further along in the multi-stage engine at some point.
Nice, yeah. Because we'll be able to get ourselves into more trouble now with the better query engine.
Yep. Then the next one is basically in one of the cases we had tried to one of our customers in production added a huge multi-value column where like a single segment had like 350 million multi-value entries where like each array was like 16,000 or thing like that. The cardinality overall was low, but it's just that the sheer number of the array length, and that kind of added up, let's say, where the forward index in a single segment was 800 MB or 900 MB, and the inverted index was 400 MB. So the peculiar thing about there is that the column was only being used in the filter or the where clause. So the forward index in the segment was not really needed. You're not going to do any projections or aggregations or transformations on that column. So we added this feature where we can actually generate segments without the forward index. And obviously queries which kind of rely on forward index for processing are going to fail. So yeah, selectively, it really depends on the user requirement on how you want to use the column. And to enable this feature, the current constraint is pretty strong in the sense that you need to have dictionary and inverted index on the column. And that is because if later, let's say you really want forward index, right, then on the reload path, you can rebuild the forward index. So essentially, on the exist to apply this feature on existing segments, just reload it. Then that will disable or delete the forward index on existing columns from existing segments. And later on, if you want to get it back, then you can also rebuild the forward index on existing columns using dictionary inverted index just by reloading the segment. Yep. And the design doc and user docs are linked here.
How's that configured? Is it a configuration that's disabled by default, and I have to enable it to allow me to do this?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one a new table config knob, just like many other that okay,
Okay.
I don't want forward index on these columns.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yep. Yeah, this is not really a feature, but code base and all the Pinot users. So we are able to maybe also our largest cluster which has like several thousands of tables and segments, and it has been deployed in production. And one of the things we observed that like significant improved ZK write density, and that kind of has resulted in overall and things like that. We also published a very short article on LinkedIn about this, Sophie, on some of the benefits that we observed after upgrading the Helix. Yep. Yeah, so we added basically a new instance assignment strategy. Like today, the assignment happens in two stages. Like for a new table, you first assign the instances, and then once the instance assignment is done, then you kind of spray the segments on those assigned instances. So instance assignment is like currently two, replica group based and non-replica group based. And for the replica group based, we basically added this strategy where the instances can be placed across replica group in a fault diverse manner. Now, the concept of fault here, like when this was done in the context of like Azure fault domains, but the way it has been implemented and the design and abstractions, it is like not really tied to some particular compute infrastructure. In fact, we have piggybacked on the concept of tag-based tag pool ID to kind of leverage, kind of morph it into fault domain ID and even the configuration and stuff like that. So essentially, if your table has like R replicas and let's say the underlying compute infra provides n fault domains, then the current algorithm and implementation tries to guarantee that with the fault domain diverse instance assignment, if one or more instances in a fault domain go down or the fault domain entirely goes down, then no more than R by F instances from those across those replica groups can go down. So that's basically the guarantee. We have a detailed design that we publish in open source along with the mathematical proof of the algorithm. And yeah, there are users trying to probably leverage this. Yeah, lastly, actually, yeah, second last. We worked on a couple of optimizations. One is that when the server tries to download the segment from controller, basically it kind of downloads it and then untars it and then does a bunch of things, right? So what we were observing is that for data heavy use cases, we had observed spiky utilization. Example like disk bandwidth, it was getting saturated. Like there was a period of low and then immediately 3 GB per second, then low and then immediately 3 GB per second, and in a consistent manner as in our segment was getting pushed. And that kind of also impacted the query latency. So what we did is that we changed this to like when the server is downloading, the untar is also happening at the same time in a streaming manner. And at the same time, this is also like rate limited. So overall, you sort of get a controlled resource utilization. I think there's a typo. What I meant was controlled, not controller. Controlled resource utilization in terms of disk bandwidth, IO bandwidth, and network. And there are user docs. We have enabled this in our production. And there are user docs here for people who want to enable this optimization. And next is that on the reload path today, if you want to toggle things like, okay, you want to enable dictionary on a column or want to disable dictionary, or let's say for a raw column, you want to change the compression type from LZ4, which is the default, to something else. Then especially for append tables, if you want the changes to take effect on existing segments, you need to backfill or refresh. So we made changes on the reload path where you can actually apply these changes in place on segments by rewriting the corresponding data structures, dictionary, and dependent indexes, and you don't have to backfill and refresh. Next one.
All right, and that is no.
Yeah, just the last one. Yeah, also implemented some other enhancements. Basically, as some of the folks were trying to do some initial ramp up on the code base, we added a few aggregation functions like histogram, and then covariance for both sampled and population. Improvement and we the cardinality first, and then for in cardinality of the bitmap to kind of use the lowest one to evaluate that first. And lastly, we also the support for multi-value raw columns kind of existed, but the query support wasn't there, and we kind of stumbled upon it while working on something else. So we made changes throughout the engine to kind of add support, full SQL support for the.
All right, now let's see. We do have some of the folks on the call who have built some of these things. Rong and Sid have given us updates. If you've got questions, this is actually a great place and time to ask them. I'll just give everybody a minute and see if you've got any. What areas would contributions be most wanted? Mayank, Sid, Neha, Rong, anybody got any thoughts there? Documentation, yes.
Yeah, the V2 engine definitely is one of the things that can use a lot of help. There's a lot of issues that, there are a lot of, query features as well, like pagination that we want to support, that we want to do. There's a list of, I cannot recall right now, but there is a list of a lot of things in the open source issues that we can go through. And Elon, if you're interested, we can definitely use your help there.
And thank you, Maya. Another question. Can you throw some light on features lined up for next year? We're actually not doing roadmap as a part of this retrospective right now. We may come back around to that in January and talk in the new year about here's what we think is lined up, without promising, because who knows where things go. But obviously, V2 query engine has more work to be done on it. That's going to be a huge thing. But in terms of the rest of that picture, we're going to talk about that in January.
I think it will be good to hear from the community as well on what they would like to see in the project. I think that's kind of how we have been doing this last 2 years. I remember we even sent out a poll to the entire community on list of features that you would like to see in Pinot. Maybe I think Neha or Mayank, you can bring that back. We had a poly or something like that. We set it up, and then we feed it with a list of features that we think we want to add in the community. It would be good to see what else we want to be added, and it's actually pretty cool to even go back and look at some of the things that we had planned and how many of them we actually added to. So that would be something that I would like to see.
Okay, I'll work with Neha on that. That sounds like a great idea. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making the project possible and the community vibrant and possible. And thank you for making it such an awesome place to be. And for me, it's a place to work. So thank you. And we're kind of getting close to the end of the year. So I know a lot of people start taking time off. So happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy whatever time you can take at the end of the year. And we'll be back at it in January. We'll see you then.
Happy holidays. Thank you.